Ladies and gentlemen, I am struggling to contain my excitement right now as I introduce today's guest. We have the blessing of being in the presence of a phenomenal woman. I won't delay any further. Please give your full attention today to Rasheeda S. Liberty, owner of Lady Lib Sports and Entertainment. Rasheeda, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. This is a season right now of little butterfly excitement. Seeing our guys going to camp, preseason, and those things, I think is really an exciting time for us. But it's also a nerve wracking time because we know this is also the time where teams start to reduce and change and shift and move players around. So it's an interesting time.
That must be obviously what that goes without saying. Must be challenging, not just for yourself and your agency, but managing expectations of individual players when those changes do happen, which can occur very abruptly. How do you, like, without jumping into the weeds right away, like, how do you manage those expectations for players, these young guys?
Yeah, so when we know that they're coming in from a let's say a rookie mini camp tryout guy that's signed to the 90 or someone coming in as a PFA, and there's different levels we call PFA 1, PFA 2 in our business. So for us, what we do is we start that conditioning and that conversation all through signing. So our first meetings when we're in the middle of closing, we're talking to our players and trying to get them to sign. We tell them where we believe they will end up. And then we also tell them alternative paths because I think everyone wants to go to the NFL. Everyone wants the big show, but we know that the NFL is a very selective league, and it's a as much as we say developmental, it's not a developmental league. I mean, it's refining tools, but it's not a league where you go to get better. You will get better naturally, stronger, faster, and those kind of things. But you have to be a pretty put together product and have some really good tools. So we start setting them up for that conversation early. Let them know if you're a PFA, if you're a 90-man roster guy, the chances of you being cut or put on practice roster are very strong. And if that happens, these are the things we need to do. We need to look at alternative leagues. We need to start cross selling you to CFL, UFL, because we don't want you to miss opportunity. So just sharing that with them. Now, if they're in a situation where before they go to camp, we kind of put some bugs in their ears like, hey, if you're not getting a lot of reps, or you saw that, hey, I had a great day. And then the next day I started dropping balls. And then the next day they kind of took my reps away. That's a sign that you're probably going right down that roster, right down to home by September. So we really do spend a lot of time educating our players to let them setting expectation. I don't ever want to be in a situation where a player is going, "How did this happen to me?" or I didn't know this could be the case." We want to let them know right away that it could be the case.
That must be such a stressful life, not just for you, but then for the players. I'm
Yeah,
imagining one of my favorite players in LA right now, um, Xavier Smith, just
yeah.
going through that day to day. Like, us fans for the most part, they're like, oh, it's just practice. It's easy. They have an easy life. Like, no, it can change on the daily when you're
Dramatically.
fighting for that roster spot.
Dramatically. And Xavier's doing a great job.
He works
And I
so hard.
know he is a hard worker.
Hmm.
He last year went in, he knew that, hey, I'm coming from small school. I tested well, but it could be a chance that I may not get drafted. And if I'm not drafted, where do I go? What's the best opportunity to make the roster? The Rams was that opportunity. And although he didn't make the 53-man roster, the practice roster was quite an honor. And the fact that they kept him on practice roster the whole year. Because a lot of guys make the practice roster and they go home still. So your practice roster, that's those first few weeks, and then you get cut. But when a team keeps you on practice roster the full year, there's definitely some interest there. And then, of course, the immediate extension right after the season, that was a huge indicator that, hey, we got some love for this player.
I know the Rams organization, they have a lot of value in the guys that, like you said, work hard, and the proof is in the pudding so far. He hasn't seen the field yet. He's played a little bit in preseason last year, but obviously he's doing something behind the scenes. They're earning that trust. That's actually how I met him. Actually, how I came around to following your page and seeing the work that you've been doing for a lot of these young athletes. I went to a day of training camp, After all the
Yeah.
bags were put away, everyone was gone, fans were leaving. He's out there on the jugs machine, still working on his craft, and it's really
Mhm.
commendable, especially for an undrafted free agent rookie. That's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a hard worker. And that I think that's one of the messages I like to leave with players. You can't just like football, kind of do football. Hey, it's something to do. Like this is a passion, like a love, and you have to know that before you sign players. That this is not just something that you're using as a vehicle to make money, right? Because if you play for free, I know you're serious. I know you're serious.
That's it's interesting to hear that because you hear it in the media a lot, like when they're almost talking negatively about players, like, "Oh, does this guy really love the game, or does he have other
Hmm.
interests?" So that's a real thing, a real occurrence that you have to when you're looking at athletes coming into the league.
Yes, yes, definitely a real thing. So they will definitely look at, and I tell players this: your social media. It's not that coaches or front offices look at your social media. In fact, I say a lot of times social media is for fans, friends, and followers. That's it. That's it. Right? They're not making business decisions off your social media. But one business decision that the investigative teams make is a character grade.
Mm.
And so if I see you on your social media throwing up gang signs, kicking it in the club, at the strip club, hanging around the wrong crowd, cussing, using music that's very profane, those kind of things, those actually feed into your character grade that the investigative team does. So we're really careful at trying to help our clients make sure that their social media is scrubbed, and we use, of course, our external PR firm, CKC Consulting, to do that.
Yeah, it's you usually only hear about players' social medias when there's something negative in the news. So that's the
Hmm.
job. You just kind of nip it in the bud. Just hey, don't let that be an issue.
Yeah, don't let your Saturday fascination make you miss your Sunday obligation. I just
I'm about to put that on
like,
a T-shirt. I like that.
right. I'm like, come on now. Like if they're young, they're experiencing things, but everybody doesn't have to know everything. Your life is not on display.
It's a generational thing. It's
Yes.
yeah. I'm 32, but I just like I look at these guys that are like 10 years, my junior, and I feel like an old man, like just shaking my fist at the cloud, like, what are you doing, kid? Like just
What are you doing? Yeah, I was on with a show a couple weeks ago, and they brought up a post by a player that was in the portal and said, "Hey, I'm all for all these FCS schools coming after me, but I'm better than that. I'm an FBS guy."
uh,
And I was like, and I think he may still be in the portal, but he was like, "I'm better than that. I'm FBS," and I was like, "Oh, don't diss the FCS schools."
very, very good lesson. I'm sure you teach your players that just because you can say it doesn't mean you should say it. Like just
That's right. That's right.
keep it at home. Um, so that all these life lessons I'm kind of getting, and what I've been seeing from my little bit of research. I didn't want to dive too deep into your personal life or anything. I wanted to hear it straight from you. But
Yeah.
the common occurrence that I'm seeing is you teach your players with like a family initiative.
So we do a lot of research about, like, we may know, it's been amazing to watch players become so personal with me, with Joy, who's our other agent, Joy Vaughn Griffin, um, Brandon, who helps us with our scouting, Chris, who also helps with scouting, Jelani, our intern, who helps with client ops. I'm just looking at how we kind of, they'll say, "Hey, did you know this was going on in his life? Or did you know this? Can we tap into that a little more?" We plan and we work them for their, to understand that we got to take care of the mind, the man. We say we take care of the man, the athlete, and the philanthropist. We take care of the man first. We make sure that his talent is amplified, and we make sure that he gives back as a whole person through philanthropy. So that's kind of our motto, of how we engage. And we've had to deal with, children being born. We had to deal with legal issues. We had to deal with deaths in the family. So we understand how to care for them in a special way. We're not the agency that signs the player, you never hear from your agent again after the draft, right? Now, sometimes we have to part ways, not necessarily part ways like, "Hey, we're out of your life." It's more like, hey, I think the career is over now, but we're still always here for you. So if you need something to help you transition, you need us to look at your resume. We need you want us to put you in front of some teams or front offices or scouting opportunities or colleges. We'll do those things. So we're no one's ever like done, if that makes sense.
That does
They
make
may be
a lot of sense. It's that level of care is that represent that's preceding like your name itself. When I look at Lady Lib, it's a common thread that I'm seeing. Even as soon as Davius Richard was talking about when he was choosing his agency, his representation, the fact he showed up with your entire team on a Zoom call, had a pre-draft plan ready, attack plan ready for him.
Mm-hmm.
How did you become Lady Lib? I know it sounds like a very general question.
Yeah,
Talk to me a little bit about your background and how we got to this point, because it takes a special person to put that level of care into a lot of young athletes who are probably in different stages of life, got a lot going on, like you said. So that's a lot for you to undertake with your own agency. I mean, tell me a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, so I've always worked in Fortune 100 companies. And a lot of it is around negotiation and engagement. So I'm a finance person by trade. So I teach businesses how to make money. I've always come in and make businesses profitable. But specifically, I worked on the market finance side. So that's around advertising, brand building, creating new images, structure, and learning from the marketing teams. And so I think that naturally, like how to build a brand is built into my DNA. The second piece about this is that I have a wonderful husband who's a coach. He's a former NFL coach. He coaches at Rice University right now as well on there, and also a recruiting coordinator there. So it is. He told me, he said, just seeing young men come in and out of our lives for years, he's like, you're really good with them. And then you also had that little thing where you can beat somebody up in a room to kind of get things done. He's like, you need to put that negotiation skill together. So I went to law school at Marquette, have an MBA as well from Marquette. And I also went to London Business School, where I learned high power negotiations and CEO school.
Ooh.
So that utilizing those skills, I don't think anyone can really out negotiate me. So that's where it's like, once I read you, I can kind of figure out like, this is how I'm going to get this done. And for the most part, we've been successful, very successful. In the negotiation.
That's such a cool skill to have. So don't remind me to never even try to argue with you.
It's like, well, he was injured last year. Yeah, well, why are you on the phone with me if you weren't interested in him? Yeah. So it's like those kind of conversations. But it's also, there's the unicorn in the room is that I'm also a Black female, right? The elephant in the room. And so when you think about this industry, it's very white male driven. And so, and men who played football, right? I've never played football. So I think there's also establishing a level of trust from them. And it has been wonderful. When I tell you that some of my greatest mentors in the front offices and NFL front office, they have just attached to me and helped and made some things happen for me. Put me in places, gave me numbers, gave me little tidbits of this is how you get this done. So I've learned a lot from the industry and have never felt excluded in any way.
That's fantastic to hear. And I do have, so I have two branching conversations we can jump into, and you kind of alluded to one of them, representation in the NFL. It's twofold, player-wise and agent-wise. So you kind of hinted at that already, so I don't want to lose that thread. But you mentioned negotiation tactics. That's what most fans, even someone like myself who's a complete football nerd, when we think of NFL agency, we think of obviously you're in the room negotiating on the player's behalf. But that's not all you do. And you've hinted a little bit at taking care of the man on the day-to-day. For people who really don't know what an agent does, walk me through a day in the life. What makes you so important, and maybe makes you stand out? You don't want to go through your calendar because I'm sure it's stacked, but like a regular day in the life of an agent.
I hate to say it, but the contract is the easy part.
Well, yeah, London School made it easy.
Yeah, that is the easy part. Once you get the contract, he's signed, he's in, right? And unfortunately, some agents drop off right there. I got you the contract. I'll check on you here and there, right? But you're forgetting that he doesn't know how to manage his money. He doesn't know even sometimes how to get on a plane.
Oh
And
my God,
that's
that
the truth
first part
because
must be so challenging.
yeah, he doesn't even know that he can't bring his duffel bag as a carry-on the airplane because he has been flying private planes in college. He's
Yeah.
going to show up to the airport an hour before because he's going right to the tarmac. And it's like, you can't, your bag was supposed to be checked. What's TSA pre-check? Like, they don't know. So it's a lot of life education. Small things like beneficiaries, right? Or life insurance outside the NFL. It's like, well, I got life insurance with the NFL. Yeah, but when you get cut, you don't have life insurance anymore. And here you are, a, a young male with no insurance. Who's going to insure you with no job? You got to get the life insurance now for a cheaper rate because we don't want your mom, after your former NFL player, be establishing a GoFundMe to bury you. Like small things like that. So I think the work is the financial teams, how to set up their living, giving them tools on like, hey, you better automate your payment. I had a player come home and his lights were off. He couldn't figure out why his lights were off. He couldn't figure why it wasn't electricity in the house.
No.
And he was like, I have been gone a couple months. I don't think I paid the bill. You got disconnected. I mean, an NFL player getting disconnected. So I just, it's small things like that. Buying high interest cars, people trying to give you jewelry, people trying to get you in debt. So we put a lot of financial sources around them, and financial sources come in multifaceted. There's an investor, there's a tax person, and then there's a life insurance and insurance piece. And so we give them that. I think there's also an injury, right? We had a player get injured, and you think about, okay, there's a mental health component there to get them just be able to talk it out, explain how they feel. And sometimes as an agent, they'll usually open up to you, but when they open up, some things are so big that as an agent, it's like, ooh, this is bigger than I thought. I need to call in help for him, right? And give him a resource to really talk to about it where he feels comfortable. He can't drive. He's injured. So who's driving him around? Well, as an agency, we got to fly people to that client to make sure that his house is set up. He has food in the refrigerator. He can get back and forth to his appointments. His copays have to be taken care of. Like he's sick. Like who's going to Walgreens or the pharmacy to go get his pain medication? Small things like that. That's an agency's role. So agency is big. Parents, like, hey, tell me about my kid's contract. Of course, we're never going to do that. But, parents like, we never share salary. One of our rules is that we never share salary information with media or family. We don't share salary information with anyone. I told them that's your deal. And sometimes you see stuff wrong and it's like, I can't correct it because I'm not going to share his salary information.
Yeah.
But small things like that, I think the financial teams and the mental health coaching, the managing the family who wants in on certain things. And it's like, you don't have to have your family on payroll. That's not your responsibility. You can give them things, teaching them that you pay the vendors directly, never give money directly to a family member. Just little strategies to really help them manage their life. Where am I getting my hair cut? We have Josh Cephus. He has dreads.
Mm-hmm.
Where's he getting his hair done in Jacksonville right now?
Yeah, because he doesn't know anybody down there.
He doesn't know anybody. So we found him a hairstylist, right? To make sure he has his hair in place. He's in OTAs and training camp. He doesn't have a lot of time. That stylist has to come to him. Mm-hmm. Those kind of things. So yeah, like that's agency life. And then you're always working on the next class.
That is incredible. Like even the little things, like obviously I assume it went as deep as, checking in, making sure they have the resources, but to go as far as, hey, my player's injured, let's make sure the fridge is stocked with food. That's such a family touch that I don't think any amount of money can buy that. Like, I'd love that. No. I live an hour away from family, and I'd love that if somebody did that for me.
I know. And it fly there. People laugh, but it's so funny because we had a player get injured, and I was in Vegas. And I had to fly all the way to where he was coming home to. And I literally got his bags off the carousel, got the driver to pull up for him, got the wheelchairs put in place. Like me as an agent, I'm running through the airport with his luggage.
Oh my gosh.
But that's the touch of like we got to take care of him right during this time.
And to do that without like a hey, I did this for you, remember, to do that without any kind of
No,
connotation,
no,
that
and it's your
that's
money,
amazing.
right? It's you would never bill them for that. Some agents might, but we don't. That's just the cost of doing business.
That's pretty incredible. So my follow up question to that is a even simpler one. What is your favorite part of being an agent?
I love seeing them happy on the field and have their dreams like manifested. Like seeing, I think the best part, and I hate to say it like this, but when they're coming off the field and the media's there and they're talking into the mic, and you see that excitement, they're happy with what they've been able to produce on the field. I believe that's the ultimate excitement. Seeing them sign that first contract as well is a big thing. We had one of our players this year say, "I'm rich." I said, "No, you're not." No, you're
Them
not.
taxes.
No, you're not. Let me. And we also walk through that. We show them the grid of what everything looks like when it comes out and what you really have left.
How
And
many
they're like,
times do their faces drop? They're like, wait, what?
yeah. I'm like, yeah, you retain about 40%. And it's like,
Oh,
what?
I mean, I still got money
Yeah.
though.
Oh yeah, and then you have to pay me. And it's like, what?
It's like I
So
love you, but this workout
yeah,
I'm free.
we don't work for free. Yeah. And that's sometimes that can be a tough conversation, but luckily we've had very integral clients who understand like this little bit of money is nothing compared to the time I take of this agency and what I've been able to get. They get it. I mean, the NFL only allows you to charge 3%. Are we really arguing about another $4,000 or something like that? Like it,
Yeah.
and when you put it in that context, you're kind of like, yeah, that is kind of.
So jumping into the more serious conversation in regards to representation in the NFL. So right now, as of last year, it was 54% of NFL rosters are made up of black athletes, with only 16 of those actually being from an HBCU on opening day last year. So half the league had only one per roster. Um, Not only that, but in 2024, there were 0 HBCU players drafted in this last draft. And then this also ties into agency. Only 7.5% of NFL agents are African American. So obviously, there's a shift in culture, shift in dynamic on both fronts. The NFL is trying, at least what they put on paper, to make a push to support HBCUs and incoming players. But why do you think just overall HBCU pool of athletes are underrepresented, and what's being done either by yourself or the NFL to kind of attack that?
So I'm really big on HBCU athletes. And I will say this, I think the number one, so it's multifaceted. I always say we look at the outcome, but we don't look at the system. So the system looks like this. You have smaller school talent, right? Not on television for visibility. If you're in a state that has big schools surrounding you, usually the scouts are going to come through there or kind of wave through there one time, if that. But they're going to spend their time at, like, if you're in North Carolina, you may go to Central once, North Carolina Central one time. But you're going to go to NC State and Charlotte, maybe Duke. You're going to go to those places 4 or 5 times. And so I think systematically, from a scouting perspective, you have to actually pay attention and say, what raw talent do I have here? I think there is also an issue with funding. So you're usually not going to have the best nutrition program, the best strength program. And in some cases, you don't have the most refined coaching staff, right? Because we do find that in HBCU world, the coaching staff is majority HBCU. It's kind of I don't want to say a fraternity, but they kind of support one another. And one of the things I challenge is that I always believe in learning from the successful. And so I would love to see how some of these D1, Power 5, or now P4 schools, some of their talent actually comes to the HBCU world to create that visibility from a coaching standpoint, but also to refine the tools and teach what it takes to have a drafted player in the NFL. The second piece of that is from an agency standpoint, we made a commitment that we will always sign at least one HBCU player. what it is there has to be a brand build and an opportunity given. And I feel like when you have the right representation, that representation is going to create your brand. They're going to put you in front of those scouts. I can't tell you the number of scouts, even from Xavier Smith when at FAMU, people knew him. There were a handful of scouts that knew who he was, but there were a lot of officers that did not know who he was, had never even been to FAMU. And I called and I said, hey, I got this guy. He's a receiver down at Xavier. His name is Xavier Smith. He's really good. He's fast. I think he's going to be powerful. He has special teams value, blah, 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 blah. And this was before we signed him. And I said, I'm looking at him. And they were like, who? Okay, let me take a look at him. Call right back and was like, you know what? I think you may have something there. Then he calls his friend. And then all of a sudden, the scouts are all talking about Xavier Smith. But it takes representation to do that. Representation pushes the button. What they see on the screen is important. So a lot of times guys don't have the football and they pick agents and say, well, it's my agent's fault. No, it's not your agent's fault. It's your fault because of what you've been able to put on film. In Xavier's case, he was able to produce on film. Isaiah Land, able to produce on film. Marquise Bell, able to produce on film. But it took an agent to call around the league and say, I need you to pay attention and look at that guy's film. And I will say this, and this is like taboo, but I'm going to say it. I think there's also I don't know if that Black woman can help me. I think I'm going to try to go with a big agency, but a big agency is not interested in you because you're a PFA guy or a not known guy. And I always say the most powerful agent is the one that works you from being no one to someone. And if I got a first round draft pick and I'm an agent, I'm not doing a lot of work there. He was a first round draft pick before I signed him. It's not a lot of work there. The only work you're doing is the marketing and the brand and, building the money around him, right? But other than that, the best agents in this industry are the ones that take the guy that no one knows and they move him up to PFA late round or a late round moved up to mid round. It's the ones that make the shift in players that are the most powerful agents. But yeah, I think HBCUs, in summary, I think there's also a systematic issue with the nutrition, the strength, and the coaching that makes it a little less attractive to the NFL. I think there's an opportunity to put an investment in the HBCU players. And I think if the NFL made a commitment such as a Rooney Rule that said, I'm going to actually make a concerted effort to put at least one HBCU player on a team or half the teams, whatever the case may be, on a practice roster, and they can stay on the practice roster at no charge, like we do with Pathways program, the International Pathways program. They don't get a charge for a Pathways player.
That's a great point.
You don't get a charge for an HBCU player. And then this one other thing, I know I'm talking your ears off, but
this is great insight, by the way. Please keep going.
A reality check is that if you look at small conferences, you would only expect 1 to 2 players to get drafted every year from an HBCU, just by the number of players, period. Because someone asked me this year, what about the Pioneer? What about PF? What about the Pioneer League? What about the such and such league? What about, there's other small conferences. And so with those small conferences, they're not getting drafted either. But we're putting a lot of attention on the HBCUs. But if you look at the number of players, and then you look at the percentage that actually get drafted from every league, I'll scratch P4, scratch G5, and look at all the whatever's left. How many of those players what percentage got drafted as well? It's about the same.
Oh, wow.
It's the same. So you would only if you did the math, you would say, I could only expect in a good year, maybe 1 or 2 to get drafted. So 0 is not unheard of.
You made a really great point. I could definitely see, I would hope they do something like the Pathways program. Like you said, there's not a charge against the roster, obviously against the cap only, to house an international player. Same could be done for HBCU if they wanted to make that initiative.
They wanted to make the initiative. And even if they wanted to open it up to the smaller conferences, period. Because you may not have enough qualified HBCU players for that program, right? Because I've been a part of the HBCU Legacy Bowl for the last 3 years. One of the things that I would challenge the league on is send your front offices. Like, be very intentional. All of them do send scouts, but they're usually more of the junior scouts. I'm talking about send the same people you send the Senior Bowl or Shrine Bowl. Those are the bigger bowls, well-respected bowls. No disrespect to any one of them. But those same level of people that you send in front of your front office, send those to the HBCU Legacy Bowl too. And you would start to get more visibility there. I will say the HBCU Legacy Bowl this year, there was definitely an upgrade in the talent.
And you're representing one of the bells of the ball in Davius
Yeah,
Richard.
yeah. Yeah, Davis is gonna have a shot here soon. So yeah, it is. He is. I hate that he suffered his injury.
Yeah.
We all hate it. I mean, I think the whole HBC community hates it. But we know that at optimal performance, he's gonna be something to deal with. So and a lot of teams have shown interest, and they were there. They came for him to the HBCU Legacy Bowl.
I mean, over 8,000 passing yards, over 2,000 rushing yards in his career at NC Central. Like, yeah, I'd make sure one of my scouts is there, like taking a look at him.
Yeah, for sure. And something our agency is proud of is that we're back to back on offensive MVP for the HBCU Legacy Bowl. We had Xavier last year, Davius this year.
I didn't even realize that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So,
How is Davius doing, by the way? They obviously don't tell us about his health, but like just spirits wise, how's he doing?
Well. He's doing well, mentally, physically doing well. He is preparing for his opportunity, which we do feel is coming very, very soon.
Nice.
We wanted him at his optimal performance, and he's moving there a lot faster than what we thought.
That's fantastic to hear. And his, if you don't want to divulge more into his story so far leading up to the draft and the current date, that's fine. But in regards to managing expectations and unforeseen things happening, especially right before the draft, I know the HBCU community was looking at Davius as, hey, this is one of the opportunities where to break through a lot of those stereotypes we're talking about, underrepresentation. You have a star quarterback, one of the best performing quarterbacks in HBCU history, and then he has an injury right before draft. I'm sure that took a shot to his mental health. That's not fun to deal with, to say the least. So how do you manage the expectation like that? Like that's an extreme case.
Yeah, he is. I think in managing that, one of the things is that, hey, we're going to get through this, and here's what the other side looks like. I think tuning out the pundits, the media, and I will tell you, the media was unbelievable in good ways. I was getting calls 2-3 in the morning at the day of the game, just asking like, how's Davius? This is off the record. Like, we just want to know. So a lot of love there. And I told Davius, I said, you got to own your own message, when you're ready, and just say like, I enjoyed, and he truly enjoyed the HBCU Legacy Bowl. He wanted to support HBCUs. He wants to be a voice for HBCUs, especially North Carolina Central. And he was hoping to be that flagship for his for all of that. And unfortunately, that didn't happen right away. Well, right after the draft, everybody's going, "What? He didn't know excited, And it was just, I told him, tune that out. And keep working on your path. We know what's about to happen. We know where you're going to go. So let's just let it be. And I think he did a really good job. And one of his key statements he always says is, I'm taking it day by day. I take it every day. And he's a very spiritual man. So I believe that has really sustained him through this process. And he sees the other side.
That's wonderful to hear. Well, from everything I've seen, super high character guy, obviously hell of a performer, to say the least.
He has an A character grade. I think he was rated one of the highest character grades of any quarterback in the 2024 draft.
And something like this is going to shine through to put that it's like, hey, it's not just all what we put out there. Like, this is real if he's able to get through this as positive as possible. And I don't know where he's going to go. I won't press for information, but I know my favorite team in LA would love to have him on the roster. I'd be super excited about that. But,
I need to call those guys out there. Every time I call the Rams, they don't have a problem picking up the phone. They're like, yeah, Rasheeda, what do you need? So
I love hearing
yeah,
that.
I love the Rams and their front office and what they've been able to do. I love all the teams. So if any other team is listening,
Yes,
I
put
love
that out
all
there.
the teams.
We love them all.
I love all the teams that have had my players, and we've had players across, I think, 18 of the 32 teams. We've
That's
had them
great.
either be rookie minicamp tryouts, 90-man roster, practice roster, right? So the teams have been very gracious in welcoming our players.
So I don't want to dive. So speaking of the players that you do represent,
Mhm.
we've hinted at Xavier Smith a few times. He's no stranger to this podcast. My fans, I've talked about him glowingly just in my little bit of watching him on tape. Another one
Mhm.
that kind of obviously reminds me just like him, just based on experience. Another high performer in college, another
Mhm.
undrafted free agent.
Yep.
Just signed the Jacksonville Jaguars. Talk to me a little bit
Yeah.
about Josh, his path, and what's the plan for him this coming season.
Josh, we have very high hopes he will be a 53-man roster guy. Um,
Nice.
his hands are accurate, and I think that comes from a lot of people don't know this, or unless you really studied him, is that he was a quarterback all through high school. So he converted to receiver. He's also an exceptional baseball player. So his hand-eye core, he could have went either way. And so his hand-eye coordination has been his success in how well he receives the ball. He came in with the lowest drop percentage in this year's draft. I think his height plays into him, and Josh is just a good guy. He's just a great guy. If you get to know him, you just can't help but love him. So the Jags love him. They fought for him. He had 15 teams come immediately following the draft, or as day three was winding down, and had some very substantial offers. And I will say the Jaguars made the best bid for him. Really just played to, hey, this is where we see him valuable. This is what we need him. Just overwhelmingly just showed a level of care for him, his family, as well as the agency. And so we do really feel like he's valued down there, and he made the best choice with the Jags for him.
I love that. I do like the program that Coach Peterson runs down there. I'm a fan of his
Yeah.
myself, so I'll be looking
Yeah.
out for Joshua Cephus on the field this year.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, he's gonna
that
be
that
doing
raises
it.
that raises a good point. I won't take too much of your time. We're almost near the end here. So like draft night, right? When you have these guys that are fringe, that are like, hey, maybe sixth or seventh, maybe preferred undrafted free agent. I mean, give me a little bit of insight of what that's like the night of, because I'm sure you're
Yeah.
probably more nervous than the players themselves, waiting to hear their name called.
Uh, we're constantly on the phone with the teams, so it's what we call like a war room. A really This year was a really tough war room for Josh. I don't think I sweat that bad in years, but because the phone would not quit ringing. The phone, I mean, when I'm on the phone with one team, another team's calling, another team's texting. It was just a madhouse. And I think when we start to get, first of all, if your guy is highly touted for a high PFA or late round, pretty at the end of day two, early day three, because the teams are already kind of saying, hey, we want to let you know we're interested, right? Um, how's Josh doing? What are other teams saying? They're asking those questions as we're going into day three. He's starting to get calls from coaches. He's starting to get calls from front offices, lobbying for him. So you know where you kind of stand. So we had very high hopes that he would be drafted, but as we started getting into the sixth, seventh round, when so many teams were calling, even the ones he had visits with, it was at that time we believed, okay, this is probably falling into high PFA, because we have a number of teams saying we can't draft. We're not going to be able to do it. We're coming up on this pick, we're drafted this, or coming up on this next pick, we're going to draft that. And what we see on, and I think just for the fans, what you see on TV is so far behind what's happening in a lot of ways. So you in that last day moves so fast. Sometimes they're 4 or 5 picks ahead. So I'm like, you can't look at the TV and say, well, Green Bay, you got a pick coming up now here. And it's like, we've already submitted that pick like 20 minutes ago. So we kind of knew he was headed towards high PFA, and that war, it's a lot of negotiation. we condition our players on basically four things. Number one, you're going to go to the team that you can make the roster. That's all we care about. Number two, we're going to go to the team that has a great coaching staff, meaning that they develop players from PFA status to the roster. Number three, we're going to go with who's built relationship over time and that you feel comfortable with. Not just I feel comfortable with them. They visited with me. They came to all my stuff. They interviewed me at the Hula Bowl. They interviewed me at the Shrine Bowl. And then number four, we're looking at the money. Not necessarily guaranteed money, which is a facade for a lot of people. Guaranteed money, that 100,000, 200,000 means nothing. They got guarantees that are multi-million dollar guarantees. So I always tell players, look at the sign-on bonus. For sign-on bonuses, on average, if they're offering you 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, you're a high PFA. If they're offering you 10,000 or less, low PFA. I want you as more of a camp body. Those are kind of, if you're a quarterback, you're going to get like 30, 35, right? So we know those indicator reports when we come in, so we can tell when a team is offering like, yeah, we'll take him for $1,000 over here. He's not going over there. He has no chance to make that roster. They're not serious. Or they didn't make him high enough. But if they say, hey, we'll take him for 10, we'll take him 15, 20. So that's kind of what draft day looks like. We put all the things on the board, go back to the number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then at the end of the day, if all things are equal, we go to the money.
So it's your job at the end of the end during all that, while that's happening, to not just communicate with all the teams, but to see where the money really talks. Because some people's words, I don't want to say coaches lie, but maybe embellishing a little bit on what their plans are for your player. Yeah. And then the money is kind of the proof in the pudding there.
Yeah, it's like you just drafted two receivers. Why would I send them where two receivers have been drafted and you're offering them $1,000? Like, he's not going. He's not going to make the roster. So it's just he's just your camp body to rest maybe your wide receiver one from an injury, right? So it's just those small things, and also being in tune before you go into the draft or what's happening on those rosters.
Makes sense. Thank you for that insight. I've got two more questions for you. They're pretty quick ones, and then I'll let you go on with your busy day. After the drafted, so the next few days, I don't know if it's 48 hours, 72 hours. I don't know what that hectic period is. I'm assuming it's just a mad rush of just getting a lot of things done right after they're drafted or they're signed. What do those following days look like after a team is selected?
So usually we're trying to get to them. One of the rules of thumb for me I try, especially if I have multiple clients, I don't want to sit in their living room with their family going through that process. It's like, I don't want them to see how the sausage is made. So the number one thing I'm trying to do that night is figure out how I'm going to, now that we got the contract is pretty much sent immediately. Those teams are going to lock in those contracts. Oh, wow. Once that contract is sent immediately, we schedule, either if they're local, we'll go to them, but if they're not local, we'll do Zoom and we go through the legal pieces of that contract. We want them to know everything that they're signing up for before they actually sign into the contract. They may not actually sign the contract until they get to camp. The other thing that we're doing is we're planning some type of send-off event. Our agency sponsors send-offs for our clients as part of their offer. So they get a send-off event. If the family wants to do it, I always say seize the moment, because he may come right back. So go ahead and do the send-off as soon as possible, right? Do the send-off. We're also working through their travel arrangements. Most teams are going to fly you first class, so your bags are going to be covered, things like that. Whatever airline they're going to be with, we establish, we tell them to establish the app for that airline, because that's probably going to be your airline of choice. We want you to earn points. So little small details like that. But we usually get to our client just to congratulate them, thank them for the opportunity, and we get them ready for, now you're about to go to camp. Here are the things you need. Here's going to be your resource. Here's where you're going to live. Here's how they're going to feed you. Here's the address you get to your families, those kind of things.
Wow. Yeah, you're literally like the head of the family, just making sure they're coordinated and ready for their new part of life. It's such a paternal role you have to take. And not to stereotype the fact that you're a female in this industry, like having to play a motherly role. Right? It almost is like a maternal thing, having to make sure they're taken care of more than just the business side.
Yes, for sure.
And then, my last question is Very, very simple. You'll be able to answer it very quickly. What has been, if you have any words of wisdom for future clients, future potential draftees, or just young men in general that are looking to accomplish this dream that you're helping a lot of young men reach,
Mhm.
do you have any words of advice? Like it could be short, long, anything at all.
Number one, put it on film. Put it on film. No plays off. Every single play matters. Highlight reels don't matter. Teams don't care about your highlights. They care about full games. So they're looking at how you go to the sideline. Did you take a play off? Did you blow off that? Did you blow off that play? Did you get angry? Did you fight on the field? Did you yell at your coach? Did you support your teammate when they did well? They're watching the whole game and your whole dynamic. Your life is under a microscope when you're working in that last season. Choose representation wisely. Don't necessarily always go with what's popular. Go with what's going to work the hardest for you. And when you're selecting an agent, always as an agency, I do not sell that, hey, I got a first round, I got a second round, I got this, I got that, I represent so and so. At the end of the day, I don't care who you represent. The only person I care about you representing is me. And so be very selfish in finding an agent that cares about you, not necessarily bragging about who else they represent, because those other people they represent are going to take priority over you. And at the end of the draft, you'll be sitting with your going, man, my agent said I didn't have anything else. Exactly, because they're too busy worried about the guy that they got drafted. So make sure that you understand those dynamics of what happens if I don't get drafted. What's next? I think lastly, making sure that your coaches know that you're serious about the league, because their voices mean a lot when the scouts come through and they're asking questions. Teams will call the coaching staff. They will call trainers. They will investigate you on that campus like never before. And you'll realize, like, how did they get notes from 10 people? I didn't even know 10 people were watching me. They were the cooks, the janitors. They ask so many questions and they have a portfolio of what the statements have been. So nothing is secret. So make sure you're integral in all your actions. Those are kind of my last, like, my seeds. Do not devalue the tape. Do not devalue character. Clean up your social media and make the right choices as you're going into the draft. Don't wait too long. Don't call looking for an agent in January. It's not happening.
That is, I mean, if I was in a situation where I was athletic enough to be a player, 100% would want to go with your team, Lady Lib Sports
Oh, thank
Entertainment,
you.
because
Thank
it
you.
sounds like those words of advice aren't even for players. That's just to be a good person in general,
Mm-hmm.
and I commend you for that. Like I'm high. My channel will never ever be one that talks negatively on players like character. Even when it comes
Yeah.
to contract negotiations, like nope, go make all the money that you deserve. NFL has plenty of it. Take some of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so to know that there's representation that's on there, representing them the best way possible as people is great to hear. It makes me feel good as a fan. So,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. We do our best. We do our best, and we're very selective in how we choose our players. But I have not. I've seen players go on and do well, but I've not seen the ones that we wanted. I have not seen, unfortunately, them go on to do what we expected them to do, if that makes sense. Like, I'm like, man, we could have put you a lot further than that. But yeah. So, but I think we can't possibly sign everyone. So there are great agents out there that do good work. And so I refer those a lot if I'm too full.
but I'm assuming you folks are growing because if you're doing great work, representing great players, you're going to grow. The last
Yeah.
thing I mean, if you want to tell us, do you have anything big coming up? Anything you'd like to announce at all?
Yeah, we want to add this summer we're going to add probably another intern, and we're probably going to add two more agents to our agency. We
Nice.
just physically, and we want to build out our client operations side. That's that side that says, did you eat today? Do you have your car? Do you need an apartment? Like the side that's really going to be your caretaker while you're focused on football. We don't want our players running around the city trying to get their lights cut back on. We want to make sure that's taken care of. So I think building that piece out is really big. And we also are now establishing partnership with NFLPA certified financial advisors on our side to build them into our team early on so that that financial piece is not an afterthought, but it's beforehand.
Good. Yeah, I
So
always hate hearing the stories of players just losing all their money that they've worked so hard
yeah,
for. So that's
yeah,
fantastic to hear.
for
Well,
sure. For sure.
well, Rasheeda, As promised, I didn't want to keep you a full hour. The fact you've given me 50 minutes of your time, I appreciate it. All of your social links are in the description below. Give Lady Lib Sports Entertainment a follow. Please follow them along. She gives great wealth of information on the weekly about her players, about agency, about just recruitment in general. Thank you, Rasheeda. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well.
See you guys next time.